Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm working on my mountain here, and I wanted to just shoot a little bit of video as I go along, so you can see the process. I have a tendency to just get carried away and just do everything, and then I realize I never shot any footage for the channel, and then a lot of people end up asking me to do something on the how-tos. And so I figure, let me just make a mental note that I have to do this more often. So here's what I'm dealing with right now. This is basically what I like to call like my Kodak moment scene. So this is like where you get the most photo ops, hopefully, if it turns out good. And so far, I'm really liking the way things are turning out. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I don't like to work on scenes, or I try to avoid working on scenes that have stuff above it. So for example, in this area here, I'm probably not gonna do this area until I'm done with this, if I can help it. Sometimes you kind of get pushed into it because you want to carry through all the elements that you're putting in, but the problem with that is that when you start working on top, then all the debris, whether you're cutting or drilling or whatever, ends up down here on the scene, and then it's harder to actually get the stuff out. Get stuck on the trees and the bushes and all that nonsense. So I'm trying to work here that there's nothing above it. It's just one big scene. And what I did so far is obviously I created the mold. I used aluminum screen to create my shapes. So you can probably kind of see it on the inside. I used that kind of like black screen. It doesn't have to be black, obviously, but like that, or whatever I can get my hands on. That's more silverish right there. But then I just put a plaster cloth on top of that just to harden it. I usually go 2 layers just to make it nice and hard, so that when I have to put trees and stuff in there, it has something to grab onto. Ideally, I would have a lot of material behind the cast, so that you can, so the trees actually have somewhere to go into. But in this particular situation, it was really hard to put pink foam behind it, or do something like that. So all I did was I created a skeleton out of pink foam, and that's what I used to shape, the metal mesh around the scene, so that it has some kind of shape and doesn't just all droop down. So that's what I did just to create the shape. Obviously, once all that stuff dries, it's all white, so more like that, which is I'm working on this section just to finish it off here. So it's plain plaster cloth, and then what I did is I started one way, and then I changed my mind, and I continued with a separate technique. But what I did here is I just added straight up like compound, like plaster, stuff that you would like joint compounds, stuff that you would do sheetrock work with. And the good thing about that is that it's kind of thick. I buy like the pre-mixed stuff from Home Depot, so it's kind of thick, so you can get the castings on. You just put the stuff in the back and just kind of squash it in there, and it almost like fills in the empty spots behind it. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you do get some pretty quasi-natural ridges from the plaster itself. You just got to kind of work with it a little bit. But I did end up doing something that I wanted to do when I had my N scale layout, but it seemed too bulky and too big for N scale, and that's using the Sculptamold material, which you can see over here. So that's it's basically plaster with like recycled like newspaper in it, but it creates all these little bumps and things. So this creates more of a rough texture, which I wanted in this area. So I ended up kind of like adapting that technique for this whole area here, and then I went around to this side and continued all this new scenery with that material as well. So this is all Sculptamold on top of the plaster cloth. That stuff is a little bit easier to work with as far as spreading it, but it is a little runny, so you got to be careful not to get it all over the place. I guess depending on how you mix it, but I like to mix it a little bit on the runny side. Then once I had all all the rock molds up and everything, I went ahead and used washes, like just made up stuff that I had with acrylic paints. One of the colors I like to use for this is this charcoal gray. It's like a carbon gray, and you know, you don't have to use this company, but these I got for like, you know, 50 cents or something like that, or even less. And I had a bunch of them laying around. Unfortunately, the store I got them from closed down, so now I gotta either order them online or find them at Walmart or something. But this is a good one. I also use like tans and, you know, things that are gonna look like earth, basically, like, you know, like dirt and sand and stuff like that. But for the rocks, I used more of that material, even though I did mix it with a little bit of brown, so that I can get the really dark rock, which you find in this area in New York that I'm modeling. So I'm okay with this. I might still go back and do highlights and just get a little bit more of the brown tint in there. I did a little bit here, and I like the way that looks. So you get a little more, what do they call that? More texture and you know, rock is not always the same exact color the entire time, but when you take a general picture of the scene, there is obviously a dominant color. And in my case, what I've seen so far is there's a lot of like dark gray like this in the areas that I've been looking at. But there, I do see, you know, all extremes inside of that, like browns and whites and, you know, even some reddish kind of rocks here and there, depending on how, you know, things kind of wash through the rock. I'm sure there's stains and other things that create that. But I do like this, and I'm gonna get to what I did there in just a second. But once I get the general feel of what the rock is gonna be like, then what I did is I went back and I bought a, just trying to see if I can find it here real quick. I bought like a quart of this yellowish kind of tannish paint. I forget the actual name, but if I can find the can, I'll let you know. I just saw it before, but now I lost I forgot where it was. Anyways, yeah, so it's a very light, almost yellowish sand color. And although I think it's a good base color, I think it is a little too light and a little too yellowy. But I was already, obviously, you know, I already put everything down with that color. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I should have gone a little darker generally. And by the way, this is just pure like home type paint, like the stuff you put on your walls. So latex paint. It's not acrylic stuff or washes or anything like that. So once I had it down, I was like, well, you know what? The last layout I had it a little darker than this, generally. And then when I put all my grass, all my ground cover, my grass and my dirt and whatever on top, it was nice that you could see the lighter color coming through, so it almost looked like sand. But the one thing I did not like was that everything looked exactly the same. So every little spot that was exposed looked exactly the same, and that's, in my opinion, is not what creates a realistic scene. You want variety. So after sleeping on this for, you know, for a few weeks, I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe I should try washes. So, you know, my goal is to get many different tones of brown and, you know, sand and dirt and almost like even a little black in there, to kind of pull in the colors from around. But I was actually happy that I made my base color really light, because then when you put the washes on, which is what I did here in this area, you can still see the lighter colors coming through, but now there's a blend of browns and blacks and tans that I think create, like if you see, look at this area right here. This looks great here. I love the way this looks. That looks more realistic to me than that. It's just too perfect, you know what I mean? So the mix was made basically, or the wash was basically with water, obviously, mostly water. And I don't measure things, I just kind of go by feel. Mostly water. It's this, what I have here, this concoction of colors. And it's basically 3 colors that I put in there. I used this like beige that I had a little bit of, I just had some left, so now it's empty. But I put it all in there, and then I felt like that was too red. So then I put, no, I'm sorry. I put that in. I felt like it was not red enough. So then I went with some of the stuff that I had laying around. This was given to me, so I just tried it out. But the raw sienna color, I was like, well, you know, it's kind of brownish. So I threw it in there, and it was good, but it made it a little too like orangey. So it looked like you can still see a little bit of it right here. So it was more like that, but it was, the whole thing was covered like that. So I wanted to kind of tone that down a little bit. So that mixture of the beige and the raw sienna was dulled down by just basically putting a little bit of this stuff in there. So just by doing that, it created this like murky, almost like a greenish look. But when you put it on the base, that's light tan like this, it doesn't look like that. It looks brown. So that's, you can see this basically this whole chunk right here is what I used to wash on, and it's still drying. So I think it's going to dry a little lighter than that. But I love the way it looks, because you know, it's nice to see a little bit of the orange coming through, but mostly brown and dirt color. So you know, that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to just finish all of it. But the way I work, and this is just, you know, this is just me, I don't know if anybody else does it like this, but the way I work is I go by feel. I'm not into like do exactly this and exactly that and have a gallon of this prepared, and I just kind of go by feel. And I feel, or in my opinion, you get more variety that way, because obviously every time you do a new mix, you're going to get a slightly different, you know, tone. So, you know, I don't want it to be like completely different, but you know, I think it creates more variety. When you look at a big scene like this, you'll see like different shades of color. Plus, I'm never afraid to go back and blend things in or add things, or you know, like let's say this side comes out a little darker. I'm not afraid to lighten this up or darken that up, and you know, but I end up usually blending it pretty well, where you can't really tell where where the seam is. But what I was going to say before was that I like also to go into one section and test drive what I'm going to put in here. So I add my trees, I add my, you know, this is eventually going to be like a bush. It's just fiber right now, but I'm going to cover it with like burnt grass and weeds and things like that. I'm going to add some of this stuff here, which I just found at the hobby shop. This looks like a really cool thing to have in like little bunches. Blooming yellow. Just kind of weeds and things. Let me just back out here a little bit. So yeah, I think that'll add nice texture if we just put, you know, a little bit of that. You can kind of see how that's gonna, with the gray and the brown, it's gonna look really cool. But you know, you could do that in small amounts here and there. Maybe some of this tall grass. Obviously, I got to add ground cover, and I put a little bit of like turf over here just to see how it would look. This is that typical Woodland Scenics earth material. It's just like the foam. So yeah, so what I like to do is basically see the entire scene in a small section, so then I can say, okay, this is what I want, or I don't like this, rather than covering the whole thing with ground foam and then going back and then realizing I don't really like that. Then you know, now you're stuck with a lot of ground foam in there. So I'm gonna do I do a big enough area so I can get a big kind of like idea of what it's going to look like. Because you know, if you just go ahead and do like just this section here, that's not enough for the eye to kind of see the whole picture. So I'm going to do just this area here, which is the, you know, the most exposed, and I'm going to mess with it and see how I like it. And then from there, I'll go ahead and spread it in both directions and throughout the new scenery over there. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is that I always do my ballasting first for several reasons. Number one, you know, that's where the track is. So you want to make sure that track is like in there and locked in and functioning before you put the ballast in. And when you put the ballast in, it further, you know, affixes the track into its place. So, you know, with the glue on top and everything, I feel like it's got a really strong hold of the roadbed, and it's not going to kink or do anything like that. Hopefully, I'm hoping that this winter is not going to be like last winter where I found kinks everywhere. I cut my gaps and I let it go through a whole season, and it stayed put. You know, I didn't see anything go wrong. So let's see how it behaves this winter. But once you have your track down and your ballast down, then I do the scenery around that, because I feel like if you have all your scenery done and then you start doing ballast, that stuff bounces and it goes all over the place. So I've made that mistake before where I have all the ground cover, it's beautiful, and then I'm doing the ballast and I have like ballast like up here and down here. It's like it looks ridiculous, and then you got to be picking all that stuff out of there. It's just really hard to do. So my recommendation is do your ballasting first and then go around, because you have more control. Like let's say I want to, cover this with grass or whatever. There's a lot more control doing that, where the stuff's not going to bounce all over the place. Just be careful that you don't have that going, or some kind of fan, while you're doing the foam, because that stuff likes to fly. It's very light. But with no movement of air, it's really easy to control that, just kind of like putting it down. Plus you can always mask the track like that, whereas you can't do that when there's like ground cover. You can't mask all of that to get to the ballast. So that's just my approach. So what I'm going to do now is continue to mess around with this area here and then see if I'm going to use a certain type of ground foam, or what color bushes I want to put in there, or if I'm going to use more rock or more dirt colors, or a mix of all that, and we'll see how it starts coming out. So I'll see you in a few. All right, so before I get going here, I just wanted to back up and show you the base color that I was using. I got this, like I said, from Home Depot, and it's really cheap paint. This stuff is like very inexpensive. It's flat, obviously, and birch beige is the color. So if anybody wants to use it, that's the one. And then I wanted to just show you what I try to do as like just to get going. I was blessed to get all of these handed down to me from somebody's layout who is dismantling it or just downsizing. So these are very old, but they still it's foam, doesn't matter, and they're in great condition. And he actually went ahead, the person that gave it to me, he went ahead and labeled everything with the non-woke Land O'Lakes covers. I guess if somebody sees this and gets offended, I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, I like to go with very neutral colors first. So my favorite is the burnt grass. I feel like that gives a nice general feel. I also like the earth and the earth blends. And again, this is all wood and scenic stuff. And then for the more aggressive stuff, these are like a medium kind of clump. It's called weeds. And this is also like a green clump kind of thing. So just to create a little bit more texture, but I'll go very light on those. And I'll probably do more of this kind of thing with the super trees. It's basically a super tree that's shoved in there and it looks like a big bush. So, and then again, like I said, I'm going to use all different techniques after I have the ground cover down. I'm going to go with Mod Podge. This is like a matte, you can find these anywhere. And I'm just going to use a beat up old brush to kind of spread the glue. I start from the top down, so gravity kind of works it down to the bottom. But I don't go in very large sections. I'll try to do, like, for example, this spot right here. Then I'll do a little bit of this, and I'll keep working my way down until I get down to the bottom, because stuff always falls. So you end up vacuuming it up, putting it back in, or what I do sometimes is, as I'm mixing the stuff, I'll vacuum what's down there with I'll use like a pantyhose type thing over the vacuum. I'll collect all that stuff, and then that's already mixed, so it's everything here mixed up, and then I'll use it to kind of like spread out around the scene. But so that's what I'm gonna do next. So I'll be back once I'm done with that. All right, so I got the ground cover started here, and again, this is just me. I tend to kind of do things as I go. So I wanted to kind of show you the technique I'm using currently, which will probably change 30 more times to get this effect. So I try to use sort of common sense as to what would be happening in something in an area like this, where there's like, you know, more vertical places and more, you know, horizontal places, and where the sun might be hitting more, creating more vegetation or whatever it is, so that it doesn't all look like a big mat. So you know, when I see layouts that look like a carpet is around the rocks, that's not realistic to me. You got to be able to see dirt behind it. You got to be able to see weeds coming out, different colors, and things like that. So for example, once I get the glue down, what I do is I go with the darker stuff first, so the earth color, and I basically just take it and I just start sprinkling it on like that, but very sparse, like very kind of like open. And then I go for my earth blend or my earth blend, or this burnt grass is not the one that I normally buy. This is more yellow, and yes, it's supposed to be yellowish, but my burnt grass is more like that. So I kind of go with this, and that's what you see. That's a little bit more dominant in the scene. So it's like a dull green kind of look. And then I take my thicker stuff, in this case it's called weeds, and I'll go in and sprinkle it. But I just found a new technique, which I wanted to show you. So you see the glue is still kind of wet. So if you just take the stuff and you shove it onto the glue like this, that creates a nice looking, like overgrown weeds kind of thing, or bushy type thing there. And because it's so vertical, it would kind of hang like that. So I love the way that looks. Hopefully when I hit it with the scenic cement, it won't fall completely, but you know, some always falls off. But so far I'm really liking how this is looking. It looks very natural to me. Obviously the white stuff will go away. That's all going to dry, and you'll see what's, you know, the brown behind it. Another thing I wanted to show you was that if you take the, you know, just the finer stuff like this stuff here, and you find also some kind of glue lines, like for example right here, you can just kind of push it into that, and it creates almost like a thicker type clump there. So now you get like different undulations and different, you know, levels of grass. That's the same stuff as that. It's just that I pushed it in with my thumb where there was some glue there. I'll try a little bit up here, like right here. You know, don't be afraid. It's all gonna blow off anyway, whatever is excess. But you know, that looks a lot more natural than just everything same color. And now the more I look at this, the more I like it, because now the greens are really pulling that brown out. It's more contrast. So I'm not going to be afraid to go back and just highlight here and there on the rocks later on. The other thing that I found, for example, and this is something that I just found right now, is that there are some areas that look like this naturally from the way the plaster ended up drying and the way the colors ended up drying. So to me, that looks like another rock that's kind of embedded in there, and it's brownish. So I left that alone. I barely touched it. I just put a little bit of grass here. And again, that was just coincidence that it was like that, but that looks cool when you step back and you see that one brown thing here. You know, you don't have to, I don't think I'm going to do that often, but for example, something like this might be cool to leave a little bit exposed, just to give it some other effect. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. This is just kind of like a base type thing. It's looking good already, so I think once I add a few trees here and there, I might either leave it like that or add more of the other stuff, the other, you know, bushes and dry grass and tall grass and stuff like that. So I'll be back once I get a little further. All right, so I figure let me just get some footage of how I apply this stuff. It's just a little bit hard with holding the camera and doing it at the same time, but I'll do my best here. So I just, you know, I take a pretty generous amount of glue and I just kind of work it in. And I try to find the spots that are not completely vertical or like very inclined this way. For example, like here, I try not to put glue there because it wouldn't be, that's not where the sun would be hitting a lot. So, I mean, you would get some vegetation there, but you would get mostly here where the sun is hitting, you know, straight on. So like a hill like this would get plenty of, in my opinion, plenty of exposure from what I've seen. And so this would all get a nice amount of glue. Don't be afraid, like if you get a little bit on top of a rock like that, that's cool. You know, sometimes weeds grow on top of the rock also. In fact, I'm thinking of adding some of those little spots, like in flat spots like that or something. I might just put a little bit of grass on top of that. Don't overdo it. I don't think you need to overdo it, but I'm gonna try to just go all the way down here. And about this wide. So, you know, you have time to work with this glue. You don't have to work very fast. You just don't want to wait too long because then it all dries up on you. But, and again, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You could, in fact, you don't want it to be perfect because you want the variety. But obviously I'm working it only in the section where I added the wash. I'm not, you know, I don't want to go there yet. This is pretty vertical, but it does have a little slope to it. So I'm going to put a little bit on there. Some of it grabs onto it. And then we got company upstairs, so that's why you hear the dogs going crazy. And by the way, the stuff that fell down to the bottom down here, it wasn't as much as I expected, so I just kind of, even if you brush over it with the glue, it doesn't make a difference. It's almost better if you make a mess of it. So let's just do that section for now, and then I'll go back and do more. So next I'll take the Earth Blend, which is like the darker stuff, and just put it over here so I don't spray it all over the place. And I'll just grab like that much, and I'll just start kind of, you know, I'll just start kind of doing this. Try to get kind of close so that, you know, you don't waste too much, but it'll catch as it falls. That's why I like to work from the top down. Just like that. And again, not too much because you want to get variety. Sometimes I even throw it when it's a little bit steep like this, I'll just throw it and it'll grab a little better. Put some up here. So yeah, I'll just kind of mess around. And for example, like, you know, you get a little bit like that, just blow it off. There you go, see, fixed. Again, it's more about the unexpected than it is about controlling this perfectly. So once I get kind of like a general coat like that, I'll go to the greener stuff like this, and that's where I tend to put a little bit more, go a little heavier on that. But if it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. No big deal. And again, this is just from experience, it tends to become more dull as you spray the liquid cement on top. Not the, you know, not the liquid cement, the scenic cement. So, you know, don't be afraid to go a little heavy, generally. So look at this area here. I'm just gonna kind of shove this into the rock. You see how that gets clumped up like that? It's kind of like what I'm looking for, that effect. And then I got too much here again, so that's it. Some of it actually blew up into the rocks here, so I kind of like that. See that right there? I think it looks great. So I'm gonna leave it. And then I'll take some of these weeds and just kind of find little nooks for them. Like right in here. You know, obviously look for places where there's glue. Don't put it on top of the other foam because it won't stick. But, you know, stuff like that tends to grow like under the rock and like in little caves, little spots like this. Over here. Maybe over here a little bit. Like that. And it's stuff that you wouldn't really pay attention to when you see the photo, but this stuff makes a difference, believe it or not. Trying to see if there's any other little spots. And listen, if you go back after you're done with this and you realize, hey, I want a little bit more of this stuff like here, and just put a little glue in there and just pop it on. In fact, I could do it right now. Just take a little bit, you know, like this, and just plop it on there. And then you take your weeds and you just, simple as that. There's no science to it. There's no like, don't go crazy. But, you know, try to get an idea of what the whole scene is going to do and how it's going to tie in. There's still a lot to do here, but at least it's starting to look like, you know, like a real scene with the right kind of base on it. So yeah, that's basically the only colors that I'm using, those three right now. So it's the darker earth stuff, this stuff, the lighter stuff, and then the weeds. I'm not gonna do anything different now. I'm gonna wait until I see how this dries and how it all blends in before I start doing everything else. So that's my scene so far. All right, so here we are. We went ahead and stained the rest of the area here with that wash that I was talking about. So if you notice, I stained all the way through up to where the new plaster is. I didn't go in the back there because I still have to spray paint the tracks from this point on. So once I finish the spray paint and the ballasting, then I'll do the section here. But I did go ahead and do this here since it's within the completed section. And I went as high as here. I didn't continue on because I still had to figure out what I'm doing here. So it's not worth doing the scenery yet. Plus I might add a few more rock castings over here. But with that said, I'm ready for all of this to be covered with the scenic foam, you know, with the grass and dirt, whatever. The only issue is that I ran out. So I have plenty of earth left, but as you can see, I'm all out of burnt grass. So I have to go to the hobby shop or order some. Luckily, there's one near my house, so I can just grab from there. But yeah, once I get that, I'll be in business, sort of, because I also ran out of glue. So that's empty. So I'll probably end up getting another big one like this because it seems to go pretty quick with HO scale. That one lasted me forever on the N scale layout, but everything was much smaller. I only had a little bit left from the N scale layout, so that's what I used here. So now that I have all this covered, you can see that it blends in really nicely. And I'm really glad that I darkened the yellow or the sand color with this wash. Because again, you can still see the sand color coming through, but it's not the only thing you see like over there. That just looks too even to me. I want a little more difference in shading and stuff like that. And the other thing I did by mistake was that when I spray painted the track ties with the really dark brown camouflage Rust-Oleum paint, a lot of it just kind of came up a little bit on the hill. So there's just another, shade of brown. Plus you get a little leakage from doing the wash on the rocks. So all that stuff actually helps. You can't really tell. I mean, all of that was over here also. So as you can see, you can't really tell that there's streaks and things. But it does help with darkening some areas here and there. Anything that might be exposed slightly. So this was a little bit difficult to do because I have the wall right there. And what I'm going to do is just mask the side here that's not completely touching the wall with bushes and, trees and things. So you don't really see the wire hanging out there. But either way, most of the scenery is seen from like this angle here. You can't really tell what's there, so once you get here, you kind of lose that corner and you're more focused on here. So just a few bushes, I think, will do the trick along the side there. The top doesn't really matter, although I got up to the edge really nicely. But what I might do is slip a blue, just a piece of masonite with, painted blue behind it, because there is room back there. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but there's a good 4 inches at the narrowest spot behind that hill there. So I can just, slide a piece of masonite there. And this way you have some kind of blue background. Plus, you're gonna have the blue from the masonite here. And there's gonna be trees all up at the top here. So a lot of that's just gonna be just kind of peeking through, but not really dominant in the scene. But I'm really happy with how this looks so far, and we're not even close to being done. But it's a great start, and it's a good base for adding trees. You know, we're gonna be adding a lot of trees here and there, and then bushes, and then also like heavier bushes like that. The only thing I want to do a little more of is some of the shading that I did here with the wash. So I might go around and just kind of highlight some of the rocks, like I said before. As far as the portal goes, I'm going to dress it much better than this, but it's pretty good. I mean, I like this here. I like how this came out. I just got to be careful now that I think of it. I got to be careful when I start spraying the scenic cement that I don't get the portal soaked, because this is just foam and plaster. So I have a feeling the scenic cement might affect that pretty bad. So what I might do is just put something in front of it while I'm spraying, just so I don't hit it directly. And if a little bit gets on the sides or at the top, if it gets on it, you know, I'm not too concerned. We'll see. We'll find out. The other thing I noticed was that as I was trying to add glue to some of the lower areas here, because all the scenic material accumulating at the bottom, it got all clumped up. Like over here, it's really bad. But that I'm going to leave. I'm just going to spray it and affix it to where it is. But it looks kind of good like that. But anyway, the point was that as I brought my brush from the glue to this and back into the glue and back and forth, I started to create these clumps. And it also happened while I was doing the staining. I was getting into the material with my stain brush or with the wash brush. And when I was going to the other areas, it was actually creating these little clumps of already painted, I guess, foam. So that actually is, I think it's going to benefit me rather than hurt me. So I'm leaving it. And then, you know, I'll get rid of stupid things like this. These are just little hairs and bristles from the brush and things like that. So we're on our way. I think what I might do is just try to completely finish the ground cover so that I can actually remove the tape and then just get, you know, all the what do you call it, the fine-tuning stuff, like, you know, the details in between the ballast and the ground cover, so I don't have any weird, you know, exposed areas, and also so I can run trains. And then when I'm feeling, you know, inspired, I'll go back and remask the track with the scene already kind of in place, and then start adding all the extra stuff. But, you know, when you add trees and bushes and stuff like that, it's not as sloppy as this. This is what makes the mess. That other stuff is not too bad. I'm going to try to be really careful with drilling, because when you drill into plaster, you get that white stuff all over the place, little flakes and things. So I'm going to try to have a vacuum nearby while I'm drilling so that it all gets sucked up before it starts falling down into the scene. But if not, I could always add more foam on top of those little areas and it'll disappear. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to complete this area here as soon as I get more material, and then we'll go to the next step. I hope you enjoyed this.